What's up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel, Real Talk Recovery, where we talk about recovery from addiction and I share my life with you. My name is Nicole and I'm a person in recovery, and my sobriety date is July 13th of 2015. So you guys, today what I'm going to talk to you guys about is trust. Gaining the trust back of your loved ones after years and years and years in active addiction. So let's get into it. If y'all don't mind, before I tell y'all all about this, give this video a thumbs up, comment down below, and let me know, have you reached that level of trust with your family yet? Okay, click the notification bell and all that good stuff. Okay, stick with me here. Here we go. So first and foremost, you need to know the kind of relationship that I had with my mother and father. When I was growing up, my parents were solid, you guys. They made sure that me and my sisters had everything that we needed. We weren't spoiled because we weren't rich, but my dad worked really, really hard for the things that we did have. My dad worked for the Postal Service, and my mother was a teacher, and she taught children that were developmentally delayed. And so my parents worked hard for a living. So growing up, I didn't wear like name brand clothes all the time. And if I did, I had to work hard to pay for that shit on my own. You know what I mean? But for the most part, I had a solid upbringing. My parents would take us on vacation. I was a part of a lot of extracurricular activities. I was on the dance team. I was playing fast pitch softball, basketball, all that stuff. So I had a well-balanced childhood. So I started using drugs, you guys, when I was 17 years old. And it all started because I was dating this guy. Now, this boy was like my first real love. And he was 1 year older than me, and he went to a school that was in the city, and I went to a school out in the country in Hot Springs. And so I remember the first time I ever smoked pot. I remember the first time I ever drank alcohol. All that stuff was with this boyfriend, right? So that's when my addiction started. My parents didn't really know that I had an addiction problem until halfway through my junior year in high school, when I was arrested for a public intox. Long story short, me and my friend Jessica were slamming back Seagram 7 and 7-Up, and I drank a whole bunch before I went to the game to cheer. I was cheering at the game, and I almost fell down the bleachers on top of my coach's pregnant wife. And that's when they realized I was drunk as a skunk and called the law on me. Yeah, so I went to jail for public intox, and my parents had to come bailing me out. After that happened, the downward spiral of my life began, where it was almost just like one disappointment after another. I know my parents were like wanting me to get better so bad, and they were, cheering me on. They helped me go to treatment. I went to my first treatment center when I was like 23 or 24. When I got out of treatment, I stayed sober for like 6 months, and then I relapsed. And once I relapsed that time, then I started injecting methamphetamine. I remember 6 months after I started injecting methamphetamine, I caught a charge. I got arrested for possession of a controlled substance, a Class C felony, methamphetamine, and I was placed on state probation. My dad was so mortified. I remember him getting the newspaper, and I was on the front page, and he literally could not believe it. He was so disappointed in me, you guys, and I pretty much think that was the day that I broke my dad's heart, because it was almost like, yes, they knew I had a problem, but now this charge was just like sealing the deal, like really showing how bad and out of control of a problem I did have. When I got that charge, I was on probation, and I failed all my drug tests, so my probation officer sent me to treatment, and that was my second time in treatment. And like I said, I did really good. I got out of treatment, and I stayed sober for a couple months, and then I relapsed. And I remember my parents were so upset because I had gotten a really good job working for this really nice restaurant that my parents were friends with the people who owned it. And I was making really good money. I was giving my dad all my tips and he was saving the money up for me and paying off my bills and stuff. And they were just like starting to like believe that I was going to make it out alive, right? And this was years before I ever got sober, you guys. Years. So I went through 5 treatment centers and I went to prison. Okay, I ended up getting revoked on my probation and sent to prison, and stayed there for a year. And my parents were the only people who came to visit me. If I didn't have them, I would have had nobody. They were there every Saturday to visit me without fail. And I remember the first day that they came and I got to sit with my parents, and my dad's eyes were just so sad. Like, he was just like, you could just see in his eyes that he was like, my daughter's in prison, you know what I mean? And I just cried and I cried. And I knew that I was losing my parents, you know what I mean? Like, they weren't believing in me anymore. They were losing hope that I would ever overcome addiction. When I got out of prison, I paroled out to a halfway house in Little Rock. And I stayed sober for 9 months, and then I relapsed. And that was in 2010. From 2010 to 2015, I was in and out of the hospitals because I was overdosing. I was in and out of car accidents. I sold my car for drugs. My parents had to come to Little Rock several times because I would end up in the hospital and I was in a coma, and they had to come up and be with me. Other times they came up because I had overdosed, and they called them and told my family. I had to have them stop calling my family because I didn't want to worry my parents anymore. Every time that I would go in for an overdose, they would call my family as the emergency contact. So I ended up changing my emergency contact to my friend Joe because I just didn't want to waste my parents' time anymore. In 2015, when my little boy got taken away from me, that's when I got sober and I turned my life around. But you guys, the first year I was sober, my parents stayed in New York. See, my mom and dad moved away from Arkansas because they could no longer watch me killing myself. My parents were so distraught, so heartbroken between me and my sister Michelle doing drugs that they fled. They left the state of Arkansas. And they started a new life in New York, where my dad used to live when he was a kid. After 1 year sober and seeing me growing, seeing us get custody of my son back, my parents started to see that maybe this was going to be the real deal. Maybe I was actually going to stay sober and change my life. So they sent me, Neil, and Nate a train ticket to come to New York to see him. And that was the first time my parents had ever seen me sober. I had a year sober when I went to go see them in New York after not seeing them for like 4 years. And I remember my mom and dad just kind of like, I could tell that they were thinking, is this going to last? Because they were afraid. And now I know how they felt. Whenever I worry about my husband, I know that's how my mom and dad felt when I was out there in the madness. The pain that I put my family through because of my addiction, I will never be able to take that back, but I am so aware of that today. I am aware of the pain that I inflicted on my family, and I know how serious it is today. Now, after 2 years sober, then my dad started to really think, okay, she's changing her life. And I remember he gave me cash money as a present for Christmas that year. And that's when I knew my dad was really beginning to trust me, because he would never give me money if he didn't, you know what I'm saying? And then my 3rd year sober, we were at Christmas and I was at the house with my parents, and my dad told me he was proud of me. And now he tells me he's proud proud of me all the time. But I hadn't heard my mom and dad say they were proud of me since I was a kid in high school. My dad is so proud of me now. He comes over to see me. He calls me just to check in on me. And he tells me that he knows how much I have changed. And he knows that I'm never going to go back. He says, Gina, that's my mom's name, I know Nicole's had enough. She has gone through it. She's not going back. And he is absolutely correct. I am never going to go back because I love my life today. But you don't really truly understand what it's like to love an addict until you're placed in that position yourself. And this last year, the greatest asset that I could have experienced was my husband relapsing. And it has been one of the things that has helped me in my recovery and to help others the most. That was the best thing and such a learning experience. And now, just like I gained the trust back of my mom and dad, my husband is gaining the trust back of me, my family, and his mom. And it's so amazing to see, how we all just want what's best for each other. And now that I'm sober, I can see that's what my family wanted all along when I was in my addiction. For the longest time, I thought they were just being too hard on me, but it's not that. They just didn't want to see me die. Gaining their trust back took me 3 full years to really get their trust back. But you guys, it has been well worth it. So if you're getting discouraged because your family still questions you when you go out, or they look at you kind of side-eyed if you're smoking a cigarette outside at a family function, don't even trip. I promise you, the longer you stay sober, the longer you do the next right thing, the trust will build. And when they finally tell you that they're proud of you, it will be the best feeling you've ever experienced in your whole entire life. Because really, that's all I've ever wanted to do was make my dad and my mom proud of me. And now I can actually do it, and I can actually help other people, and it's a miracle. It is a miracle.